Wow, Showtime confirms that Canelo Alvarez, payday, you want payday? I know that, is interested in possibly facing Jermall Charlo or David Benavidez. I'm going to talk about that in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Listen, I don't know how you found my video, but somehow, some way, you've made it. Please help others arrive at the content. Encourage that by doing something that's free, simple, and painless. That's throwing a like on the video. Definitely leave me a comment, subscribe, but hitting the like button goes a long way. Now, ES News has an interview with Stephen Espinoza, who's in charge of the Showtime sports programming. He covers all the sports programming, including the boxing, their sector on boxing. They just had an event. It looked lit. There were 16,000 plus people. Canelo back on pay-per-view. Canelo with an emphatic victory, taking the belt by hostile force, stopping Caleb Plant in the 11th round in a dramatic fashion, in what to me was a competitive fight. Different people feel whatever they feel. But in this interview, Stephen Espinoza says he has mentioned the idea of David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo to Team Canelo, and he says that there is interest there. So we gotta wait to see what's next. Just hearing that is a benefit to me because I like Showtime putting that bug in Canelo's ear. I'm just paraphrasing. You guys can check the interview for yourself to hear everything verbatim. Stephen Espinoza says that he enjoys collaborating with Showtime, or Showtime enjoys collaborating with Canelo Alvarez. He says Canelo has a very experienced team and they know exactly what they want and what they're looking for. And they've been around the block. Stephen Espinoza also said it's marvelous seeing Canelo go from a younger man to the maturity he has and the poise he has and where he's at in his career right now. And he says everything went great as far as relationship, dealing with Canelo again. As you guys know, Canelo Alvarez had fought on HBO with Golden Boy. And then after falling out over contracts and a dispute with Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy, Canelo Alvarez found a way to get out of his contract with Golden Boy and DAZN. It was supposed to be initially like a 10 or 11 fight deal, but there was clearly a loophole or some contractual things that Canelo's lawyer looked into, and Canelo, he must have got a weird feeling at some point, and then they started looking into the contract and certain people didn't do their job or whatever happened, and Canelo was able to free himself and become a promotionally free agent. And I told you guys then, and I'll say it again, freedom is everything. And Canelo being a free agent, that's big because you get to play the field. He went to DAZN, did a couple of fights, got the other belts, and then he just did a situation with Showtime. For what it's worth, my 2 cents, I think Canelo Alvarez, obviously I'm not on his team, I'm not in his ear, so to speak, but for my 2 cents, I think Canelo should stay with PBC. I think that's the best look for a couple reasons. For one, it's about growing the sport of boxing. Canelo, he's undisputed now, and you've seen the level of interest that this fight garnered with Caleb Plant, having an American that people knew about, have seen, have watched on main events. See, people quiet as kept because Caleb Plant was clearly the B-side to Canelo Alvarez. But what people don't realize is this: Canelo Alvarez is an A-side over pretty much everybody except for Floyd Mayweather or something, and he's retired, right? So for the most part, Canelo's the A-side over anyone he fights, right? So with that being said, he has the longest tenure, he has solid numbers that he's done, and he's been around and he's been competing at a high level, etc. And he's popular and he's commanding these purses. So Canelo is the A-side, but people tend to forget because he is the B-side. Caleb Plant was doing very strong viewership on Fox and with Premier Boxing Champs anytime he was fighting. Like when he fought in Tennessee, he had a great attendance. when he fought against Vicente. What's his name? I believe his name was Vicente Fainsbutts. And that fight, it looked packed in I think they were in Memphis, Tennessee, and it did good viewership. He was also on the prelims or the undercard for Pacquiao versus Thurman and drew good numbers, etc. Again, all that's trumped because you're fighting against Canelo Alvarez. But the point I'm making is, you see when Canelo has an adequate dance partner. He had a contemporary, both of them. Canelo, he's been doing himself a huge service by being more comfortable speaking English in public in interviews, because it's made Canelo even more he's even more liked, because the people who don't speak Spanish get to understand and relate to some of the things that Canelo's saying, and he's showing a bit more of his personality on the English side, right? He's showing some of the attitude and whatnot, and it just humanizes Canelo, So Canelo speaking English has been a major key, so to speak. So that's why I think he should stay with PBC ultimately, because I think they have the better dance partners. Stephen Espinoza said in this interview, he said for him, it's David Benavidez or Jermall Charlo. Those are the fights to make. And he said he ran it by Canelo's team and they're interested. Canelo himself says his body needs to rest and recover. The holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving and Christmas, Feliz Navidad, and New Year's. So he said he's probably out until May, which is fine, because Canelo Alvarez, before, he was only fighting 2 times a year, typically in May and September. And Floyd had that same kind of pattern too, fighting in May and September. So for Canelo to be out, that's pretty standard, I guess you could say. This particular year, the last 11 months, Canelo has been a lot more active, and he fought 4 times, so he deserves the rest. He deserves to ring in the new year and spend time with his family for the holidays. But I'm definitely checking for David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo fights. Some people throw out Demetrius Andrade, which is still a good fight, and the fight has been lingering on for quite some time, since they could have fought at 154, they could have fought at 160. The only downside with Andrade is he hasn't been given and afforded really any opportunities to grow his profile with marquee fights being on DAZN. Eddie Hearn, DAZN, they just kind of throw Demetrius Andrade, Boo Boo Andrade, he just gets thrown in there with anybody, Lucas Peeler, whatever. And now he's fighting Jason Quigley. And these aren't real big profile builders, star builder, the Liam Williams fights. These aren't the type of fights that'll garner enough interest. And I know some people are going to say, oh, Canelo's ducking Demetrius Andrade. But I do think in the past divisions, there's been a concerted effort to stay away from Demetrius Andrade at 54 and 60. However, it doesn't help or do Demetrius Andrade any services by his own team and his own platform not pushing him in the big fights that would get him the recognition to the point where Canelo has to see him. Like, for example, a mutual opponent that they could share is Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin and Andrade, they're both champions at 160. So let's say, for example, Demetrius Andrade fought Golovkin and he dominated him or he stopped him. That would be a type of performance that would have the boxing world like, okay, Demetrius Andrade has really arrived and he's, he can give Canelo. That would get people talking. But they haven't really done a great job over there with DAZN building Demetrius Andrade. Anytime you hear names like who should Canelo fight, they never even say Demetrius Andrade, and he's a DAZN fighter. They'll do polls and, suggestions. Who should he fight? Should he fight Better Biev, who's with Top Rank? Should he fight Triple G3? Should he fight Bevo? But they don't even mention Demetrius Andrade. So to me, for my dollar, I think the David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo fights are bigger at the moment because they both have great personalities and great styles to contrast with Canelo Alvarez, right? And they have better recent performances. Charlo fought Matt Korobov, who's a great fighter and amateur standout. He fought against Brandon Adams, who knocked out Boachuk and won the Contender. He fought against, most importantly, recently, Derevyanchenko, after I thought Derevyanchenko beat Triple G, right? And David Benavidez, they're putting him a week after Canelo's fight. It was supposed to be Uzcategui, but through no fault of his own, he's fighting a guy that Anthony Durrell has some issues with, you know? So it'll be good to see. So that's my opinion. I hope Canelo does stay with PBC and fight one of those mentioned people. I think those will all be great fights, and the fans would turn up. Canelo has a great big fan base in Texas. You know, I've seen David Benavidez fight in Texas, and the crowd loved him. He was on the Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia undercard. I was there ringside, and the crowd seemed to love David Benavidez's performance over J. Leon Love. And I even have some footage of it. David Benavidez was later after his fight. He was in the crowd, and the fans were all taking pictures of him and stuff like that. So he had a good warm welcome. He's from Arizona, and then Charlo's from Houston, Texas. So at the end of the day, we already know those two fan bases would be big. So these are the fights that I personally probably want to see the most. Let me know what you guys think. Good to hear Showtime even planting the seeds and trying to make that fight and get Canelo to stay. I think those are the most lucrative fights that across the board fans would love. And they have great storylines. I think they have great build-ups and all accesses. Showtime did a real good job with the all access episode 1 and 2. Hopefully they do an epilogue with the Caleb Plant. And I think David Benavidez and Charlo would make great content, great shoulder programming. And that's my take. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego, signing off.